Okay, what I'm going to take you through here is how to finely dice an onion. Not particularly difficult, but worth knowing because a lot of recipes call for it. Um, First thing I tend to do is I just take off the end and give myself a really firm base. Then what I do is I cut down all the way, bar a tiny bit, so the onion sort of retains its integrity and keeps its sort of basic shape. So there we go, so I do it like that, and then I turn it 90 degrees. I do it again. You can see basically what we're doing there is we're cubing the onion almost. Like that. And then what you can do is you can turn it over. That's why I cut the base off, because it gives you a nice stable base on which to cut. And then you can get nice little tiny onion pieces. So as you get to the end, you'll see, obviously we didn't cut all the way into that, but that's a much smaller piece. So all you do there is you then repeat the process of slicing it one way and then the other. Like that. And then we do that finally with that bit that we cut off, just to give us a stable base. And there we got it. Nicely diced up onions ready to be used in the tomato and sherry sauce we're about to cook. Okay, so the olive oil has now been on the heat for a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to put in the diced onions there. Bring those forward. And you can hear them frying away there. And anybody who's looked at my onion soup recipe, just one of the points to make about diced onions is because you've increased the area of the onions that's being cooked there, because you cut them up into much smaller pieces, these are going to cook quite a lot quicker. And although, you know, the principle's still the same, and what I'm looking to do here is to, you know, reduce them down a bit, concentrate the flavour. I like to add a little bit of caramelisation, so there's going to be elements to which, you know, the sugars in them are going to be slightly sort of burnt there, which is really nice. This tomato sauce is going to sound really simple to a lot of people because it's got no garlic in it. It's basically just very finely diced onions cooked in olive oil to really bring out the flavour. Then there's going to be a dash of sherry, tomatoes on top of that, and you know, I might actually pulp it a little bit more. And you know, a lot of people might be tempted to add in herbs, they might be tempted to add in some garlic, etc. Now, all of that's good, and you can do that. But what I'd say to you is that some of the best cooking in the world, some of the finest Italian cooking I've had, is the ones where they really like just take two flavours or three really strong flavours and allow them to come out. So what I'm looking here is I really want to take the lovely sweet sort of savoury flavour of the onions, combine that with the sharpness of the tomatoes, and just smooth that off with the sherry. So we're just going to leave these to cook, and then we're going to add the sherry and the tomatoes in. Okay, so those onions are looking pretty nicely cooked now. They've been on for about 7 or 8 minutes. You can see they're sort of golden up quite well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to add the sherry and cook them in that for a bit. Just really a sploosh of sherry, which I just think is a fantastic cooking ingredient. I mean, you know, it's great in marinades. It just adds this richness to it, and I'm very fond of, you know, Spanish cooking. I like that, the way they tend to, you know, take savoury and sweet and blend them both together. It's really great. So yeah, so that sherry's in there, and we're just going to cook that a little bit more. We're going to get the tomatoes open. So when I'm using this with pasta, that's another thing I would very much say is, you know, what I'm looking to do is get the tomatoes down nice and pulpy. But again, I don't want to overdo it with how many tomatoes I have. I don't want to sort of drown the sort of pasta. I want to have something that really thickly, nicely coats it. So I'm just going to add those in there. Mix it in. Make certain it's good and good and made up. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to bring that to the boil, and once I've done that, I'm just going to put the lid on it ever so slightly off, and that's going to reduce it down and make it really nice and thick and unctuous, and that's going to go wonderfully well. Okay, what you can see now is that the sauce has started to boil, so I'm just going to turn that down slightly because I want to keep it on that sort of a simmer, and I'm going to sort of cover it, but not all the way. You see, I've left a wee gap there, and the gap really is so that I want to keep the heat in, but at the same time I want to be able to let out the steam, because I really want this to concentrate down. So there you go. Okay, so you can see basically the sauce is reduced down quite a lot there, which is great, just what we want. There's still some liquid in it, but since what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it out and add it to the pasta, I actually want some liquid because I want the pasta to absorb that and to do the final piece of its cooking in that liquid. Here's my big bowl of pasta. Just going to pour the tomato sauce in there. What in the United States of America, according to Sopranos anyway, is called the gravy. And I'm just going to mix that up massively in there. And as I said, I'm just going to let that cook for a little bit longer. Just because what I'm looking to do is, although the pasta's quite al dente at the moment, is to get the tomatoes to the tomato sauce to absorb into the pasta. I like something like rigatoni particularly for something like this because it's great at picking up flavours because it's got these large holes running down the middle. It's also at this point that I'll add any extra seasonings, such as, for example, a bit of pepper here, a bit of salt here, which I'm just stirring in now. And a bit of pepper as well, just over the top, because I just don't think you can go wrong with freshly ground pepper. It's one of my favourite seasonings. Really, really like it. And this sauce is basically now ready to do whatever you want to it. With the pasta, it's ready to do whatever you want to add the halloumi and the asparagus, or other options you can go for, which is very nice, is you could stir through some basil, fresh basil, which would just be, totally delicious. You could tear up some mozzarella, stick that in. You could maybe fry up some bacon, add that in. And things like bacon, very much. I would always say, actually cook that separately so it develops its own flavour. And so you're not stewing it with the tomatoes. And then add that at the last moment. I mean, it's also quite useful if you've got, as I do, a vegetarian girlfriend. Because what it means is I can cook this up, and if I'm feeling like I actually fancy something meaty, I can add that in at the end. And at the same time, she can have a really nice meal as well. And it just means it means that we're not cooking more than one meal, which is great. Anyway, I hope you really enjoy it, and look forward to seeing you next time on Feminist Biscuits.